Do you ever find yourself waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, wide awake, mind racing, heart beating just a little too fast? It's quiet, the world is asleep, but your body isn't. And no matter how hard you try, you just can't fall back to sleep until the sun begins to rise. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something right up front. It's not just you. And no, it's not just getting older. Waking up at 2 a.m. for no apparent reason might feel like a sleep issue. But what if I told you it's actually a hormone problem? Specifically, a warning sign from a stress hormone called cortisol. You see, cortisol has a rhythm. It's supposed to be at its lowest when you're deep asleep, around 2 a.m. But for many people over 60, that rhythm gets disrupted. Cortisol rises at the wrong time, and your body responds like it's time to fight or flee. So instead of sleeping peacefully, your brain is solving problems. Your muscles are tense, and your heart is quietly under pressure. This might be the body's early SOS, and if we ignore it, it doesn't just cost us sleep, it could silently raise our risk of heart problems, memory issues, and more. That's why this matters, because instead of blaming yourself for poor sleep or grabbing another sleep aid, maybe it's time to ask, what is my cortisol really doing? And more importantly, how do I fix it? Most people think of cortisol as just the stress hormone. And yes, that's true, but it's also a lot more than that. Cortisol is produced by your adrenal glands, those tiny triangular glands that sit on top of your kidneys. Every time you feel anxious, rushed, irritated, or even skip a meal, your body releases cortisol to help you cope. It's part of your fight or flight system. Now in small bursts, cortisol is useful. It gives you energy. It helps regulate blood sugar. It even keeps inflammation in check. In other words, it's one of the most important hormones in your body. But here's the problem. Cortisol wasn't designed to stay high all day or all night. And as we age, especially after 60, this delicate hormone balance gets harder to maintain. The body becomes more sensitive to stress, and the adrenal glands may become overactive or just plain exhausted. So instead of gentle waves of cortisol rising and falling through the day, you start seeing spikes at the worst possible times. That's when things go wrong. High cortisol too often or for too long starts a dangerous domino effect. It can raise your blood pressure. It can break down muscle, especially in your legs, thighs, and glutes. It stores fat deep inside your belly. It even steals calcium from your bones, leading to osteoporosis. And perhaps most troubling, it burns out your brain. Studies show that elevated cortisol over time can shrink the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory and focus. So instead of just feeling a little off, high cortisol can quietly damage your heart, your metabolism, and your mind. The truth is, after 60, cortisol becomes a key factor in how well you age. It can determine whether you wake up energized or exhausted, whether you sleep through the night or stare at the ceiling until dawn. That's why understanding cortisol and getting it under control might be the most important thing you do for your health this year. When people think about heart attacks, they usually think of cholesterol, blood pressure, maybe diet. But what if one of the strongest warning signs isn't in your blood, but in your stress levels? Let's talk about cortisol again, but this time not just as a stress hormone, but as a hidden heart threat. Most doctors don't bring it up. They're trained to look at LDL, HDL, triglycerides, and yes, those matter. But the body doesn't operate in pieces, and cortisol connects everything. You see, cortisol does more than make you anxious. It raises your blood pressure by tightening your arteries and telling your kidneys to hold on to salt and water. That alone puts strain on your heart every day. But it doesn't stop there. Cortisol also tells your liver to make more glucose, even when you don't need it. This triggers insulin, and too much insulin over time leads to insulin resistance, a major risk factor for metabolic syndrome and cardiovascular disease. Now combine high blood pressure with insulin resistance, belly fat, and inflammation, and you've got the perfect storm, all quietly triggered by cortisol running too high for too long. And if you're over 60, that storm hits harder. Your arteries aren't as elastic as they once were. Your body doesn't recover from stress like it used to. What used to be a passing worry can now leave a chemical footprint that lasts for hours or days. But here's the most alarming part. In a 2021 study published in Scientific Reports, researchers looked at cortisol levels found in hair samples of patients who just had heart attacks. They found those patients had 2.4 times higher cortisol in their hair compared to healthy individuals, even when their cholesterol levels were normal. Let that sink in. Even with good lab results, hidden cortisol buildup was quietly damaging their cardiovascular system. In another long-term study on seniors, those with high nighttime cortisol had a five-fold increase in the risk of dying from heart disease. Not 5%, 5 times higher risk. So when you wake up at 2 a.m. and your heart feels just a bit tight or your thoughts feel scrambled, it might not just be a bad dream or an overactive mind. It could be a sign your heart is under chemical stress. And the danger here isn't dramatic. It's not a Hollywood-style collapse. It's slow, silent wear and tear, day after day, night after night. But here's the good news. Once you understand this connection, you can break the cycle. You can protect your heart, not just by watching what you eat or taking another pill, but by finally lowering the hormone that started it all. That's where we're headed next. If cortisol is so important, why doesn't your doctor ever talk about it? It's a fair question, and honestly, it frustrates a lot of people. Because you show up to your doctor with real symptoms, poor sleep, low energy, unexplained belly fat, rising blood pressure, and yet they just run the same old panel: LDL, HDL, total cholesterol, maybe a fasting glucose, maybe. But cortisol, rarely, if ever. And when you ask about it, you might get a half smile or a dismissive, "Your stress seems normal." Here's what's going on. Most primary care doctors weren't trained to see cortisol as a root cause. They're taught to treat symptoms. High blood pressure? Here's a pill. Trouble sleeping? Try melatonin. Gaining weight? Eat less, move more. But that's like bailing water from a sinking boat without fixing the leak. To be fair, testing cortisol isn't straightforward. A single blood draw only tells you your level at that moment, and cortisol fluctuates throughout the day. So if they test you at 10 a.m., it might look fine, even if you're waking up at 2 a.m. every night with classic signs of cortisol disruption. What you really need is a saliva test, taken 4 times a day to map your full cortisol rhythm. Or better yet, a hair cortisol test, which shows your average levels over weeks or months. But here's the catch. Many doctors don't even offer these. Some clinics won't run them unless you push. Others may not know how to interpret the results, and insurance rarely covers it. So the burden falls on you to ask, to research, to advocate for your own health. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. The truth is, many of the symptoms people over 60 face, fatigue, belly fat, anxiety, high blood pressure, aren't random. They're hormonal, and cortisol is often the silent driver. Once you know that, you can stop chasing surface-level fixes. You can go deeper and finally get to the real root. Because sometimes the most powerful answers don't come from more medication, but from asking the question no one else is asking. So now you know what cortisol is, how it affects your heart, and why most doctors never talk about it. The big question is, what can you actually do to lower it? The good news is, you don't need a prescription. You don't need fancy supplements. And you definitely don't need more stress. What you need are simple, safe, and sustainable habits that help your body reset. Let's start with the foundation. 1. Move your body gently but daily. You don't have to run marathons. In fact, too much intense cardio can raise cortisol. Instead, try this. Walk for 30 minutes in the morning, preferably in sunlight, then again for 15 minutes after dinner. That's it. Walking lowers cortisol, improves blood sugar, and helps you sleep better. Bonus, it also lowers your blood pressure without any side effects. And if you enjoy light physical work, gardening, sweeping, even organizing a garage, that counts too. The goal isn't exercise, it's motion with intention. 2. Add back what stress depletes high cortisol drains your body of key nutrients. So replenishing those is vital. Start with vitamin B1, thiamine, calms the nervous system and reduces mind chatter. The best form? Nutritional yeast, not the baking kind. Vitamin D3, cortisol blocks it, so most people with high stress are low on D. Aim for 5,000 to 10,000 IU day, especially in winter. Magnesium and potassium. These are natural relaxers. Magnesium helps you sleep. Potassium lowers blood pressure and soothes muscles. You can get these through diet, leafy greens, avocados, salmon, or use a quality electrolyte supplement without sugar. 3. Time your eating and fasting. Wisely skipping meals randomly spikes cortisol, but planned, gentle intermittent fasting can actually reset it. Start with 12 hours between dinner and breakfast. Nothing extreme, just consistency. And during the day, avoid sugar, refined carbs, and excess caffeine. They all push cortisol up. Instead, eat protein, healthy fats, and fiber. Think eggs with avocado, salmon with broccoli, olive oil over greens. Simple, satisfying, stress-reducing. 4. Wind down before bed. Without a screen, cortisol should be lowest at night, but blue light from phones and TVs tricks your brain into thinking it's still daytime. So try this. Turn off screens by 9 p.m. Dim the lights, stretch, read, sip herbal tea, even pray or journal. If you're still waking at 2 a.m., try this trick. 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in warm water before bed. Some people say it helps regulate blood sugar and reduces the cortisol spike at night. 5. Rethink stress itself. This one's personal. Maybe you're a caregiver for a loved one. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you're just tired of pretending you're not tired. That kind of stress doesn't go away with a walk or a vitamin. But here's what helps. Saying no without guilt. Taking 5 minutes alone outside, even just to breathe. Talking to someone who listens, not just talks. Letting go of what you can't control. And finding small ways to care for yourself each day. Because sometimes the key to lowering cortisol isn't doing more. It's doing less. And doing it with more love for yourself. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to begin. Because the longer cortisol stays high, the more damage it can do. But when you begin to lower it, even just a little, your sleep improves, your cravings fade, your heart relaxes, and you finally feel like yourself again. That's not a miracle. That's your body healing the moment you give it a chance. If anything I've said so far sounds familiar, if you've been waking up at 2 a.m., if you're tired no matter how long you sleep, if you feel like your body just isn't bouncing back the way it used to, take a moment right now to leave a comment. You're not complaining. You're not oversharing. You're starting a conversation that someone else might be too scared to begin. Because here's the truth. So many people over 60 are quietly suffering through these same symptoms. And many of them have no idea that cortisol could be the hidden cause. By sharing your story, even just one detail, you help others feel seen. You might even help someone realize, wait, this isn't just aging. This is something I can change. So tell me, what's your experience with stress, sleep, weight, or your heart been like? Let's make this more than just a video. Let's make it a safe space to be honest, to be human, and to heal together. I spent years thinking the exhaustion, the belly fat, the constant tension in my chest were all just part of getting older. I told myself, you're not 20 anymore, or this is just how it is after 60. But inside, something didn't feel right. Waking up in the middle of the night, feeling anxious for no reason, forgetting words, losing my strength, losing me. And then I learned about cortisol. I didn't even know what it was at first. But once I understood how this one hormone was silently shaping everything, my sleep, my weight, my heart, even my memory, I couldn't unsee it. And when I started doing just a few simple things to lower it, my life slowly came back into balance. I didn't need another pill. I didn't need to go live in the woods. I just needed to understand how stress was living inside my body and give my body the space to finally breathe. If you're over 60 and you feel like you've been running on empty, this isn't the end. It might just be the beginning. Because your body remembers how to heal, your heart remembers how to rest. All it needs is for you to remember you're still in there and you're not alone. If anything in this video made you pause, made you feel seen, made you think, that's me, please don't keep it to yourself. You might be okay now, but someone you love could be waking up every night wondering why they're tired, foggy, or afraid, and blaming themselves. Share this video. Send it to a friend, a spouse, a sibling. Post it in your community group. Let's stop normalizing silent suffering, because understanding cortisol could be the first step to healing someone's heart, literally. And who knows, maybe your story is the one that helps someone else finally say, now I understand, and I can finally breathe again.